one is always worried when there is crisis anywhere, but I don't think really countries like Brazil will suffer too much from that crisis. We have already shown during the Lehman Brothers crisis and everything that resulted from there, that our growth, based mainly on the internal market and also on a pattern of trade that is very diversified, creates some, how should I say, barriers or defenses against this kind of crisis. But of course, it would be better if it had not happened, and of course, the quicker it is solved, the better for everyone. But I don't think especially the BRIC countries, but generally speaking, most developing countries will not be affected. I think there has been discussion. I think that the European crisis will be certainly a subject for the next G20. Brazil now is actually helping Europe and Greece. We gave $200 million to help to rescue the economy, which is something not only Brazil, but Brazil, China, and other of the BRIC countries at least also helped in this rescue operation. Certainly this will be a question. I think it is very important as we deal with a situation like that, to have in mind that at the same time that there is attention paid to fiscal policies, but also to maintenance of growth and employment. Well, especially in an organization like that, when it's supposed to say that, but I think that is also important not to create a vicious cycle of recession or depression, unemployment, more crisis, more fiscal problems. So I think one has to be careful at the same time that, of course, it's necessary to have sound fiscal policy, but not go to extreme that would generate more problems than solve them. First, you have to distinguish the individual situation of each country from the global situation. Of course, one thing affects the other, but it's not exactly the same thing. We are very confident Brazil this year will grow probably 7%, which for Brazil is a huge growth because you have to take into account that most of the urbanization process that other emerging countries are going through now happened in Brazil 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So it's a huge growth. So many economists in Brazil are actually worried that we are maybe growing too much, too fast, which I don't think it's the case. But anyway, so we are confident in that respect. But we also, as I said before, think that we should not abandon this policy of growth, sustainable growth, employment, and so on. Again, how you combine fiscal policies, which are sound, with the policies of growth and employment is a challenge, but it has to be faced, and you cannot just opt for one side and abandon the other. That's actually one of the lessons that we have in Brazil, because we had sound fiscal policies, we had sound monetary policies, and at the same time, we were able to have not only economic growth, but growth in employment, better income distribution, which it shows it's possible. For other developing countries, which have many potentialities, I think it's fully possible. I don't know how it is for countries which have already explored, let us say, or exploited most of the immediate potentialities. But it should be. It should be. There's so much thing to do in terms of still greening the economy, of combating climate change, combating poverty, helping the poor countries. I mean, if you help more Africa, you'll create a market for your own, for you. I mean, for you, I'm saying Europe, or for the rich countries. As concerns Brazil, we're very confident that we'll meet all the development goals, the Millennium Development Goals. We have been especially successful in some aspects, like combating poverty. I mean, this is really probably the most, but also in questions that have to do with gender, even targets that we established for ourselves, like the racial balance and so on, and the income distribution. In all these aspects, we are doing very well. Well, because people tend to think that social policies and economic growth are contradictory. I think the story of Brazil proves exactly the contrary. Our social policies, because they combined income support, but also support for family agriculture, for instance, and for local production, all these was combined, helped us to keep growth, to keep employment going on, and I think that's a very eloquent fact, and if Brazil did it, others can do it.
There are remaining challenges in terms of global governance. What do you think the role is, perhaps in SouthSouth Cooperation in helping other countries achieve these MDGs as you have?
Well, we give a great importance to SouthSouth Cooperation. I mean, we have been doing that for a while. 3 or 4 years ago, we started doing that within ILO. As you probably know, Brazil was the first developing country to establish a new pattern of cooperation, because I think it's a pattern that changes from the traditional donor-recipient pattern. We want a partnership in which everyone sees each other on the same level. So I think this is part of the South-South Cooperation will be certainly an important part of the new global governance. But it's of course, all this requires not only a change in quantity of money, it requires also a change in mentality and understanding that helping others to grow will benefit them, but it will also benefit us. And I think this is our perception. Of course, when it comes to global governance, I think in many respects, global governance has already changed. I mean, 2 years ago, I was almost crucified by saying that the G8 was dead. But now, a few months later, Pittsburgh said that at least for economic purposes, the G20 would be the important body. Of course, it's more difficult when it comes to the more formal institutions, but even them are changing. IMF is changing. The World Bank is changing in terms of governance. The most difficult thing to change is the Security Council of the United Nations, but it will come also.